Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us again, whether that's Orange County, California, or Grand Rapids, Michigan, we are so thankful that you're here today joining us as we delve deep into the Bible. And again, at Ethos Online, what we like to do is we like to dig deep into the scriptures. We think that if we don't do the responsible work, we're shortcutting really beautiful truth that could potentially be there. And so we ask lots of questions of the text. We ask, who is the author? Who is the audience? What do these words mean? Right? Oftentimes in the Hebrew, words have multiple meanings. And so it's really important to take time to say, what was the actual word? Right? What was the intention of the word? What words followed those words? What were some of the responses from rabbis, some of the experts at that time who would read this? What kind of applications did they use? Right? What kind of interpretations did they have? And so we do a ton of work every single week to try to bring you something responsible but also enlightening. And so we have been moving through this book of Genesis, and it's taken a year, right? This is a serious study in this book. Now, when I say serious study, many people will assume, oh, it's going to be boring. But that's just not it. When you really do the difficult work, you will find there are so many gems, 5 or 6 verses. It just explodes with meaning. There's a lot of bass notes there. And I would argue many times we go to churches and we get a lot of treble, right? We get a lot of high notes, and it's kind of flowery, it's cute, it's hallmarky. But oftentimes we don't do the really deep study, and so the bass notes sometimes are missing. And so what we like to do at Ethos is we like to really go deep. We like to find those bass notes, and then we like to add different elements of it to say, here's how it applies to today. And so thank you again, all that to say thank you for joining us today at Ethos Online. And so every week we remind you, this book, Genesis, it was not a history book. It was not intended to be a book where you read certain dates, certain names where you say, this person lived this long exactly, and this happened at this exact time. That's not why the book is written. That's not why all the stories are compiled. They were not trying to write a literal history, right? The actual context of this piece being compiled in the first place was because they were in Babylonian captivity. In 587 BC, this tiny tribe of Israelites, they are basically swallowed up by the Babylonian Empire, this huge empire that seemed to encompass the world to them, right? We know other empires, other tribes were also swallowed by Babylon. And so when they come together, they're in Babylonian captivity. Most tribes are giving up their values. They're taking on Babylonian gods. And so Israel says, we're not going to comply, right? We're not going to assimilate. And so they choose not to. And they hold on to their stories, hold on to their values. They retell their stories so that the younger ones, the younger generations will pick up on this, right? They will continue the deep tradition of Judaism. And so that's the idea. It's a response to assimilation. This is why Torah, when it's brought out in front of people, when it's taken to the congregations, people begin to clap, right? People begin to celebrate because this is our identity. This is the idea. And so as we move through, always ask the deeper questions. What is this story really intended to be? And where do we see Israel in it? And so today we're going to read chapter 28, and we're going to read about 9 verses. And many times this section, there's not a lot written about it. There are little pockets of interesting meaning and interpretation, but really it's toward the end where you see a really interesting concept come out. It's at the end, I believe it's verse 8 or 9, where you begin to see, Here's the rich meaning. But I'm going to take you through some interesting concepts as well, verses 1 through 7, that I think you'll also find kind of interesting. So let's delve in. And by the way, next week, we are going to delve into the Christmas story. And we're going to take a couple weeks where we really just, we'll take a break from Genesis just for a couple weeks. But then we're going to delve really deep into what it meant for the people at that time, the Christmas story. But today, Genesis 28. So here we go. Reminder, this story right here is still about Jacob and Esau. And so these two individuals, this picture, I love this picture here of the two brothers. The two brothers, for Jewish tradition, there was rich meaning here. And so again, one rabbi, famous Rabbi Rashi says, Jacob, who dwelt in tents, spent his days in the house of study. Quiet, thoughtful, settled, orderly, and well-integrated Jacob, not Esau, understood intuitively the dignity of the birthright and the spiritual implications of his father's blessing. He strove to protect the future of Judaism and Jewish life, even if it meant deceiving his brother and father, right? Jacob. Jacob is the one that the Jewish nation would say is like the higher calling of who they're supposed to be. Right? He's the one that studies. He's thoughtful. He gets it. He sees this is the blessing. While as Esau, the hairy caveman brother, he doesn't get it. He doesn't see the sacred in it. He misses it. He's all about his belly, right? He just gives away the blessing. He misses it. And so again, Jacob and Esau, these are two different ways Israel prophets understood Israel. And so one is the higher self, the other is the lower self. They are symbols. They are deep, deep symbols of the two different paths Israel oftentimes goes. And sometimes it's simultaneous, right? Which side am I going to feed? Will it be the lower or the higher self? And so I love this quote here. The twins are the beautiful light and darkness that we Jews embody from day to day. Whichever side we feed is the side that will either waste the blessing of life or multiply it. Oh, that quote right there, so good, right? So good. And so let's delve in. Chapter 28, 1-9. Here we go. Isaac called Jacob and blessed him. So again, understand this. There's the calling back of the story, right? Where does Jacob go? Where does he leave all of this? This is their attempt to kind of move the story along here, right? Because there is a purpose in telling the story. So Isaac blesses Jacob, and he commanded him and said, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan." Because again, it's all about where and how does the Jewish lineage continue, right? For that ancient tribal people, that was very important. And so, arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take for yourself a wife of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. And may the Almighty God bless you and make you fruitful and multiply, and you shall become an assembly of people. And may he give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your seed with you, that you may inherit the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. And Isaac sent Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. Again, you can kind of see all these names. They're name dropping, right? And we'll get into that. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob, sent him away to Padan Aram, and take himself a wife from there, and that he blessed him, and he commanded him, saying, "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan." Jacob listened to his father and his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. Notice that father and mother, they're both giving the advice, both giving the instruction. Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan were displeasing to his father Isaac. So Esau went to Ishmael and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, the sister of Nebaioth, and in addition to his other wives as well. So, on the surface, this seems to be kind of a boring section, doesn't it? But we are moving through this verse by verse. We understand sometimes there are sections that are really wow. Other times you got to dig a little deeper. So today, let's dig a little deeper. First off, notice this, verse 1. Isaac called Jacob and blessed him. Now, there are many different words in the Hebrew for blessed. This particular one actually means it's a word picture. And here's what it means. It means to kneel down. It means to honor someone with wisdom. So it's so interesting to me. Most of the time we get this idea that the wise, we come to the wise individuals and we do the kneeling, right? But not the Hebrew way of understanding this. For the Hebrew, when one has wisdom, there is some humility to it, right? This is interesting. When you have wisdom, it means you've probably made a lot of mistakes and you've had to learn the hard way in some ways. And so when you share wisdom, you don't knock someone over the head with it, according to the Hebrew understanding. You approach the young, you approach the inexperienced humbly. Think about how beautiful that is. A wise individual will approach the young in order to instruct them in a humble way. They'll listen to the young person. They'll listen to their rants and their raving. And we've all been there. Most of us who have gotten a little bit older, right? In our 40s, 50s, 60s. We've experienced some things. But if you know as well as I do, if we were to take that wisdom to our younger selves and we were to bludgeon that person with our wisdom, they wouldn't listen, right? They wouldn't take it in. But for the Hebrews, they understood you approach people with that wisdom in a humble way and it will be received well. So good. You kneel and you offer it up to those that might listen in a humble way. That's what's going on here with Isaac and Rebekah. They are offering it up in a very humble way. So good. And then notice this. Why the daughters of Canaan? Right? What's the deal with these daughters, these Canaan daughters? That's an interesting one too. But the whole concept here with Canaan daughters, right? There's wisdom there. And then the concept of humility goes back to honoring wisdom, right? And I wanted to bring this up too because it's a bit of a rant for me. We live in a culture right now that doesn't honor wisdom. We like to honor the sexy, the interesting, the intriguing, the youthful, but we don't always honor wisdom. And so I look at different celebrities, again, whether you're far right, far left, whether you love Greta, hate Greta, love LeBron, hate LeBron, love nighttime talk TV hosts, whatever. This is not where wisdom is found. Wisdom is found often in those who have been through it. Those who the poets, the writers, the aged. We rarely ever look to those people. Usually we look to the sexy, the funny, the ones who seem to be thriving in culture, the youthful, right? But usually we miss the point. We miss the bass notes if that's all we're looking for. You can be youthful, you can be funny and have wisdom. But if those are the only attributes we're looking for, if those are the things drawing us in rather than wisdom, we oftentimes miss those bass notes. And for the Hebrews, it was all about finding the bass notes. And so let's go to the daughters of Canaan here. The daughters of Canaan, this is interesting. Why bring up daughters of Canaan? Why search for a Canaanite wife? Here's why. The Canaanites were people who were associated with lacking wisdom. The lack of wisdom caused the natural consequences of pain and death. So let me rephrase that from what I just said a second ago. Why avoid the daughters of Canaan, right? Why do we avoid them? Because they lack wisdom, right? So we're searching for wisdom. So we want to avoid the Canaanites, right? We want to move away from things that aren't filled with wisdom, aren't filled with humility. We want to move toward the things that bring life, not the things that are going to continue to hurt us, weaken us, cause our experiences to be painful, right? More painful. And so we avoid the Canaanites. That's the idea there, why that's brought up. Why Canaanites? So let's continue. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel. Now again, the house of Bethuel. Why go there? Why avoid the Canaanites? Why go to Bethuel now? Well, the word Bethuel actually means the house of wisdom, right? So is this a literal place, a symbolic place? I don't know. All I know is they use words purposely, right? And all of the rabbinic tradition says when they actually write this out, they don't say Bethuel, they actually write out the house of wisdom, right? So arise, my son, go to the place where wisdom is found. So I even thought about this today. Where do we find wisdom today? Where might you find really good wisdom? And I thought, how sad is it that I had all this time with my grandfather, and most of the time I didn't ask for that wisdom. He would give it periodically, but I think it's really sad to me that I didn't continue asking for it because I wasn't in a good place to be asking for it. I was young. I wasn't thinking that. But it's interesting that Jewish tradition, Jewish culture says, seek out those with wisdom. Go to their places where they reside. Go sit at their feet and ask for their wisdom. This is a tradition that they would do. The young were supposed to sit at the feet of the rabbis, and the rabbis would impart on them all the wisdom they had to share. Go to the house of Bethuel. It's beautiful. Go to the places where wisdom is. And notice this, when you go to the places of wisdom, when you seek wisdom, when you seek that knowledge that only comes from deep experience, look what happens. Verse 3, there you will be fruitful and you will multiply. Again, a really deep connection to Abraham, right? There you'll be fruitful and you'll multiply. When you experience wisdom, then you begin to really experience the blessings of life. It's really pretty beautiful. All right, let's go to verse 4. And may he give you, and here's where, again, if you're Jewish and you hear Abraham, you immediately think of this, right? You think of the promise, the blessings of Abraham. We read this not that long ago, right? Genesis 17. I make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations for you, and kings will come to you. I'll establish my covenant, again, my promise between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations as an everlasting promise, a covenant to be God to you and to your descendants. I'll give to you and your descendants after you the land where you live as a stranger. Again, they're captives at this moment. All the land of Canaan. Notice again, Canaan comes up, right? Those places that didn't have wisdom, they were lacking wisdom, now begin to have wisdom again. As an everlasting possession, I will be their God. Yeah, it's really pretty beautiful. It's a reminder that in the middle of captivity, the promise still holds true. And so in this moment, again, it's a reminder to Israel, who's still in Babylonian captivity, we will get through it. Our God will provide. We will move through captivity. We'll be free again. We will have land. Again, land was so important to them at that time, right? Land is where you farmed. Land is the only thing you actually felt like you owned. You could build things on, right? You could build a family, a future. This is the beauty of it. All right, so let's keep going. Verse 5 and 6. Oftentimes this gets missed here, but there's actually something really deep happening. So work with me on this. Let's move through it together because I know it seems boring at first, but watch this. Isaac sent Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. Doesn't sound very interesting yet, but listen. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob, sent him away to Padan Aram to take himself a wife from there and say that he was blessed. He commented on him saying, you shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Now there's something really cool here. Jacob must go back to his family's past, right? Back to his mother's roots in order to fully understand his future. This, again, is the story of Israel. It's really pretty beautiful. This is Torah, right? This is really talking about Torah. This is what the rabbis did. Every time they open up Torah, what they're doing is they're inviting their community into the story. They're inviting them back into the rich history. They're saying, look, let me remind you about our stories. Let me remind you of the past experiences, the values, the traditions. It's almost like they are inviting them back in time so that they can walk through it together. And once they walk through it together, they have these aha moments, right? These moments of, oh, I see. If we do that same thing, we could end up in that same place, right? It's inviting them into the story. It's inviting them into the rich tradition. And so it reminds me, if you're going to move forward, sometimes you have to go back, right? It reminds me of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? At first, the hero is separated from community. They leave their home, and then they move into this initiation period where they grow, they're challenged, they face the dragon. But always for the hero, they go back home. They go back to that road back home. And in every good story, they go back home and they bring something, they offer something interesting back home, right? There's something that they can offer, but they also go back and they have the aha moment. Wow, we've grown, we've shifted, we've changed, but there's also real beauty there that I wouldn't have been aware of had I not gone on this journey. Do you see it? Israel would not have understood the beauty of the kingdom of heaven mentality had they not been in captivity. They would not have understood the beauty of freedom had they not been free. Not that we search for that, not that we want that, but that's just life, right? And so there's a rich tradition of finding beauty in the darkness, right? Learning that after the darkness, the light on the other side is brighter, it's fuller, it's more beautiful because of the limps and the pain that we've gone through. And so being Jewish, you had that understanding. There's a phrase, we Jews walk with a limp, right? We've been through it, but we walk fuller, bigger, brighter. We understand the beauty of life because we've seen the disastrous effects of evil. We've moved through it, right? So good, so applicable for us. Let me close out in a minute. Jacob listened to his father and his mother. Verse 7, Jacob listened to his father and his mother. For Jewish children, this idea is really pretty deep. Children would sit at the feet of the wise. And so even their education, their educational system was very different than ours. Their children were looking to find wisdom, right? They were always looking to find something deeper, something richer. And so they would go to the older. They would go to the people who, again, in their tribe, were the ones who had gone through the 60 years, the 120 years, these are the people they seek. And so I love this quote. Jacob listened to his father and mother is the epitome of the wisdom voice in Babylon, calling out to Israel to heed the messages of the past, to hold firm to Jewish identity and values, to sit at the foot of wisdom and become whole. Oh, now some of you are already thinking, I just had an image. I just had a reminder of Jesus. And yeah, this is one of the reasons this story is so beautiful to me. Remember this moment in Luke? This moment, Mary and Martha, they have a party, right? Jesus chooses to go to their home. And what he does is he does what any rabbi at that time would have done. He tells people, hey, I'm coming to this home. I'm going to expand on Torah. I'm going to share thoughts. I'm going to invite you into the story. I'm going to share with you our identity and our values. And so Jesus goes to this home, and usually this was only something that males would do, right? If you are a Jewish male, younger, you would sit at the feet of Jesus, the rabbi, and you would listen respectfully. But the only ones invited in at this moment, were the Jewish young men. But notice this, Mary, a woman, right? With arguably a difficult past, right? However you choose to view Mary, she sits at the feet of Jesus. And so notice this. As they traveled along, Jesus entered a village there. A woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary. If you're Jewish, this phrase would have shocked you, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to his message. See, here's the thing about wisdom. In Genesis, wisdom is mainly offered to a certain group of people, the Jewish people, right? Jewish males. But I love what Jesus does here. He takes Genesis and he moves it forward. Now he's saying, look, this wisdom, this beautiful gift of life that we Jews have had, that we've offered the world, we now offer it to everyone. Whether you're a Gentile, Roman, right? Whether you're our captive, or one of the elites, right, who are holding power over us. Whether you're a woman, sick, broken, whatever you are, you have a place at the feet of wisdom too. You can go to the house of Bethuel. Beautiful, right? This is what Jesus offers to everyone. Marginalized, elite, anyone. It's offered for everyone. Wisdom, the Jews say here in this moment, the Jewish wisdom story. The house of Bethuel, the doors are now open for all. Oh, right? So good. So good. Continues. And here's where a really interesting moment comes up in verse 9. So Esau, remember, Esau is the lower self, the one that doesn't always follow wisdom, right? That's two sides of Israel, which arguably would be the two sides of humanity, right? Our own stories. Sometimes I follow that higher self. I feed it. Other times that lower self, right? Esau is that lower self, the non-wisdom path. And so Esau, he took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, the sister of Nebaioth, in addition to his other wives as well. So this word here, Mahalath, and actually Mahalet would have been how you'd say it. This word means place of deep suffering. Understand what the story is saying here at the close. Esau, who lacks wisdom, this is a warning that if we don't seek wisdom, if we don't follow higher self-thinking, right? If we miss it, we are destined to walk in suffering. We are destined to have that accompanying us on our journey as well. We're gonna get the limp. You see it? One rabbi says this: Esau is destined to walk in suffering until he found wisdom. Israel was learning to do the same. When we have brokenness, when we experience pain, there's joy and pain on the journey, right? When we experience this, we understand sometimes we walk with a limp. And the limp is the reminder that yes, there's joy, and yes, there's good things on the journey, but sometimes we also have those reminders. And those reminders can help us though, can't they? And so life is not always easy. It's often difficult, painful. Esau is a reminder that in life we have to learn how to walk with joy and pain, right? Life is a mix of happiness and suffering. So in this moment, Israel is in captivity. They're reading these words and they're reminding themselves, joy is coming in the morning, but sometimes we have to get through the night, right? We have to get through the night, and sometimes it leaves a limp, right? There's the Jacob and there's the Esau, and those two brothers, they walk together, right? They walk together, and at some point in this story, we're going to see they come together again. And when they come together again, Israel is restored. Yeah, and I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit. So anyways, that was a lot of fun today. I hope you got something from it. I sure did. So how do we take it home? There's an author that I really enjoy, and Maya Dur. She wrote some interesting thoughts on this, how to walk with joy and suffering. And so I wanted to share 5 of her thoughts from one of her books that I really find interesting. And so let me share with you a couple ideas here from her on how to walk with joy and suffering. So notice number 1, don't spin your story. That's something I really enjoy about the Jewish story here, right? What we call the Bible, right? Um, Rarely do they spin their story. They're willing to show you the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, right? And so I think of spin doctors when I hear this. Don't spin your story. Spin doctors, these are the media masters right now, right? In our culture, whether you're watching garbage CNN or Fox, either one of them, right? They're masters of spin. It's what they do, right? Both extremes. And so they take an event, they distort it to serve whatever their political agendas are. And we, though, often with our own stories, we will do the same. And I have been guilty of this as well as you, right? We begin spinning them in order to make ourselves the heroic one or the victim, of course, right? Either one, or maybe sometimes both, right? We spin our stories. But here's the thing. When we start to practice noticing these thoughts, these feelings, gently kind of stepping out of ourselves, asking what's real, that's when we stop spinning the story and we begin to realize, oh, I've told this story 100 times. Why is it that I'm always the victim in this story? Ask questions of your story. And once you begin doing that, you will stop spinning it in order to get something from it. And your story becomes a more honest one. I definitely have seen that in my own experience. Number 2, try smiling. I thought this was a great piece of advice, and it seems so simple, but what I love about it, there's scientific method in this. There's an understanding that when you purposely smile, it does something to your brain. It actually causes positive neurons to be released. It's a really fascinating concept here. Sometimes your joy, I love this quote, sometimes your joy is a source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy. What a great quote, right? This is just a reminder to have more positive thinking in your life. This kind of positive feedback creates kind of a loop. And for many of us, it can help us kind of overcome our own different sufferings. Number 3, shake up your routine. I like this one a lot. I get stuck in routines, and many times routines can be really healthy. But every once in a while, I think it's a positive thing to shake it up a little bit. Maybe it's time to actually take that trip to Europe, right? That you've dreamed of. Maybe it's time to register for that yoga class, right? You've never done hot yoga. Why not try it once? You might hate it, but it'd be an interesting experience, wouldn't it? Shake it up. Maybe it's time to say a kind word to a stranger when you pass them on the sidewalk. Shake things up a little. Shake it up. Number 4, I like this idea. This is a very Jewish idea, actually. Soften someone else's suffering. You may be going through something, but when you take the action to help someone else who's experiencing something like you begin to realize suffering is not unique to you, right? You're not the only one going through it. And when you take time, you realize all humans share a capacity for joy and suffering. So having contact with someone else who's going through a difficult time, offering them like simple kindness, that can be a great antidote to your own suffering, your own pain. It can help you walk through joy and suffering there at the same time. It's a beautiful thing to consider to do. And then lastly, remember your basic goodness. I get it. Religion oftentimes is all about you're evil, you're bad, your humanity is what's bad about you. Step away from that for a moment, right? If we are willing to take an unbiased look, we'll find that in spite of all our problems and confusion and pain, all of our emotional, psychological ups and downs, there is something basically really good about our existence as human beings. If you're willing to do this, you'll find there is goodness all around us. Right? You'll find the divine's fingerprints are on everything if you just look deep enough. And when I say everything, of course, I'm not referring to, Holocaust, evil things that are the far extreme outliers. I'm talking about the everyday. You will find God's fingerprints everywhere. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. I sure did. As always, please consider going to ethos-church.org/donate. Please consider here at the end of the year, consider giving some of those donations here because we work so hard to bring you this every week. And we're a tax-deductible donation that you can give. And we'd love to have you be a part of what we do to continue sharing these messages. If you'd like to join us online live, please consider going to Ethos Living Rooms. And as always, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video with everyone you know. We think, again, it's so good, so powerful to move through this book in responsible ways. So everyone, thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you next week when we delve into the Christmas story. Take care. We'll see you.